into that socket, and how do I delimit information out of that socket. You'll see this in a couple of slides to come. Okay, an overview of remote procedure calls. That's simply saying, from my main controller system, how do I understand how to marshal commands from this system over to the infected machine? How does it execute those commands and bring it back to me as if I am doing everything from my main system? That's just the overview that we would like everyone to be familiar with in terms of remote procedure calls. The next is multi-threaded applications. That's a must. Again, anytime I receive a connection or anytime I have multiple things I want to execute at the same time, I'm going to instantiate various worker threads or various threads to actually handle each particular function for me. So we will go over how do you actually start your sockets. But once I have a socket, I pretty much spawn another thread to handle everything that's being received across that socket. You'll see it in the next slide to come. And use of worker threads, already stated. Overview of Windows registry. We'll use the Windows registry just a little bit to help us establish our persistence of the implant. File transfer protocols. I will take about a minute to talk about file transfer protocol. So in general, if we are familiar with file transfer, we know that normally there is a predefined protocol at which we exchange information from a FTP server over to the client. Generally, you have your connection, you have your authentication, maybe you'll be authenticated as like an anonymous person. And now we have three main commands that you'll see across your network. Usually you'll see a get, a post, or a put. However, how do you evade, I guess, an intrusion detection system if it is looking for FTP? Or how do you evade if you have FTP that's being blocked on your network? Well, we create our own protocol inside our own botnet so that I can still have files to be sent back and forth without having to be tied to your FTP. So we'll show you. Let's see. So we already said file transfer protocol, operating system commands, and then process instantiation. That's right here. I'm going to punt for right now because we have like another slide to talk about that, because that was a kind of grief that we discovered as we went through the creation of this system. Okay, so anatomy of an attack. This is just to make sure that we're all on the same page. Generally, everyone, I think it's a good assumption to say that we are kind of familiar with the main procedures that we use to attack a system. First and foremost, you always start off with your reconnaissance. Next, we're going to scan the network to see what are the active hosts, what are the live systems that I want to go across, and what's my most likely avenue of attack to get into that network. Next, we establish penetration, in which we actually hope to gain access to a victim system. And now, as soon as you penetrate that system, generally, you stop for a moment, you get up, you do your happy dance like so, okay, and then you continue your exploitation. Because sometimes gaining access to a system is actually difficult. So since we just assumed that we gained penetration to the system, happy dance, we stop, okay, now we continue. We can choose to establish a foothold into that system. That's like your backdoor. Establish stealth and persistence. Pawn and pillage for the win. You continue to exploit as you would like, whatever your task is to execute on that system. And then we also have optional steps if you choose to patch the way you came in, so that let's say if there's an administrator that's performing his own vulnerability assessments on the network, you no longer want to make that system that you just gained access to still appear to be vulnerable. Is not a good way of hiding your tracks the way you got in. I just blocked the vulnerability so that system is secure. Just one of the things that we can do as attackers. Escalate privileges, pivot, and various other techniques that you might choose to execute onto that system. Okay, terminology. In general, as I guess from the remaining of this presentation, whenever I might say the controller, I'm simply talking about the robust user interface that's only run by the bot master. So you all are acting as the bot master. You are the people in charge of the botnet. Okay, so you can be called a bot master, the bot herder, or in general, I'll just call it the controller, because the controller is controlling commands from my main user interface over to the implant or infected machine. Next is the dropper. The dropper is generally the main exploits or the initial way that I gain entry into the system. Other people might have seen this called like stage 1 and stage 2. Have we seen like stage 1? Okay, good head nod. So stage 1 is usually how do I gain entry into that system, and then stage 2, whenever you talk about the actual anatomy of that virus gaining, I guess, becoming alive on the system, that's actually, as soon as I establish my command and control, I'm now connected directly back to my controller. I'm usually in stage 2. I'm going to add 2 more stages because the code, or I guess the programming that you use to establish your next stages are unique. So that's why I said, okay, if stage 1 is your initial implant to the system, stage 2 is your command and control onto that system. Stage 3 can actually be thought of as your persistence. How am I going to maintain persistence onto that computer? Am I going to inject myself into other processes? Am I going to use some advanced registry edits to make sure I can persist? Various different techniques. So I'm like, that might be stage 3, okay, advanced persistence. And then stage 4, how am I going to pivot out to attack other machines in that actual protected network? And then your implant, as soon as the dropper gains access to the system, he infects the system. Your implant is the main listener that becomes live on the system, and then he connects back to the controller. And then very lightweight, other considerations. We'll move on because I really want to do a lot of demo time. So something we like, and previous feedback, thank you all again for your feedback, is like, some of the pictograms help. So I'll talk about a lot of words, I'll raise my hands. Now I'll just show you a picture, and we can say, ooh, okay, I understand what he's talking about. All right, so let's set the stage. We have the controller at this spot. We then have the malware domain, the malicious domain that I'm using to serve my malware up to any system that connects to my network. And then we have the victim box. So here we are, we have the dropper, stage 1. The dropper actually gains entry into the system, and it can actually be, various different techniques you can use as your dropper to gain entry onto the computer system. Now, what happens as soon as the dropper is on the system? The dropper reaches back to my attacker domain. He downloads my implant. He configures the environment to actually exploit the system. My implant is now on the victim machine from the dropper, and now the dropper goes away. As soon as the dropper goes away, my implant establishes his command and control over to my the main controller. So that's kind of, as soon as I have my command and control established, usually I'll say we're in stage 2. And now stage 3, how am I going to persist on the computer system? The way we establish persistence is we're actually just going to write an initial key into the registry. We'll do more with persistence, but that's just what we had time to do for this demonstration. And then pivoting to other networks, we're not going to show that in this presentation, but the next ones that we'll do, we'll actually show some advanced techniques to pivot to other systems. So hopefully that'll be nice in the next presentations to come. Okay, so creating your dropper script. We try and make Splinter that we're creating to be as click-friendly as possible. So instead of creating your own dropper, you can just use Splinter to create your dropper. I think we only made options just for like three spots for you to enter in what is my attacker domain, what is the implant actually called, as soon as I download the implant from the attacker domain, and then what are the parameters to execute. So as soon as I have these parameters to execute, my implant is live, he establishes connectivity back to my controller, and now the attack is done, dropper goes away, and now I have my 2-way command and control. You'll see that in our exploitation. And this is just other things that we built in for you. One, if you choose to establish persistence, these are the keys that you can choose to change from Splinter. You can say, okay, this is what I want my registry key to be called. These are the parameters that will be written into the registry key for you, and then this is what you'll actually see. So assume you named it like Windows Update Checker. You'll actually have a new registry key that is written into your implant's machine registry along with the arguments to say, okay, how am I going to reestablish persistence whenever that computer system restarts or reboots? And the next thing is one way that we try and fool detection. So as network defenders, one way of knowing that, okay, I think this system is attacked is the way a communication or a way as a socket was established. Usually if I see some bogus executable that establishes a connection to a direct IP address, I might say, okay, this does not look right. So what's one way to mask your detection or your infection of that computer system? Well, let me add in additional header information so that if I have network defenders looking at the actual network traffic, it might look more benign because I have application. This is normal headers that you would expect to see. So that's what we created in our Visual Basic dropper that you all will have access to as soon as I get the code uploaded. So the next is socket communication. These are the actual general steps of how do I establish that socket communication between the implant and the controller. The first thing we want to start with is establishing a server socket. So your server socket is simply a server that responds sockets whenever I receive new connections into my controller. So the first thing I would do is bind to a port. On the controller side, I say, okay, open a new server socket, bind to a free port, and now I'm going to listen for new connections from any implant that's connecting to my system. The next thing is, from my implant, I actually want to establish a connection over to the server socket that we just established. Now, as soon as I receive a new connection, I receive a new socket, I open reader and writer streams on that socket. So now I can actually send information across that socket, my socket is duplexed, and I can receive information across the socket. Very seamless. Okay, whenever I do have that new socket onto that controller, I will now spawn each socket into its own worker thread. So pretty much, anytime you have a program and I'm listening, I want to read information from a stream. If that data is not buffered across that stream, generally your program is going to block until I've received bytes. So that's the purpose of having different worker threads. So as soon as I receive a connection, I have a worker thread that's listening for new implants, or it's listening for new data to come from each of my implants. As soon as I get new data, I'm going to render it on the controller, and now I have your seamless command and control is done again. Is that okay? Okay, all right, good. Now, packaging and sending commands. You don't have to follow this step, but I think in terms of demonstrating how do I actually send commands and how do I receive commands back, I actually created things in threes. The first thing that you'll see across your network is a command header. Your command header is simply telling me that from the controller, I send a command to the implant that I want you to execute a shortcut, like go ahead and grab the screen, send it back to me. Or do I want you to actually execute a command? This just allows me to do multiple commands and shortcuts to be as easy as possible, because now I have different command headers that I'm looking for. The next is understanding delimiters. Delimiters is simply a series of unique keys or unique characters that is known between my controller and my implant, so that whenever I send multiple commands in series, or whenever I have multiple arguments from a single command, how do I parse what I'm receiving across that socket? Well, you actually use delimiters to help you parse what I just received and what I'm going to execute. And now the next thing is, if I send a command from the controller, I now want to parse the command that we received. And that's what we say here. Some people refer to this as tokenization. How do I tokenize what I just received across the socket? Or pretty much we're just saying parse. You parse based on the delimiters that I have to know what is my command header and what are the arguments that I'm going to execute. And now, based on the command header, interpret what was received across the socket, and now I want to invoke the action. This is done on the implant side. Now, as soon as the implant side just executes a command, he then wants to pipe all the responses that I received from the implant side and send it back to the controller. So that's what we're saying here. Flush the command output back to the controller. As soon as the controller receives input from that arbitrary command that I sent, I'm going to render it on my screen. Okay, so now let's have a visual. It doesn't show up on the bottom of our screen here, but let's say that the controller is sending our first command. How about I have the implant say, go ahead and ping www.google.com. How do I actually execute this? You know, like, what are the statements to carry out my arbitrary code execution? Well, that's a good question, and allow us to talk about process instantiation or arbitrary code execution. So anytime I want to execute a command on the implant side, the controller says ping google.com, or go ahead and execute any statement that I'm saying, each command is going to be executed in a separate process on that implant machine. However, it's kind of important to understand that there are two main streams whenever I want to interact with each process that I start to carry out each execution that was sent from the controller to the implant. That was a lot of words, but it will be simple whenever we get to the demonstration part. But I want to talk about two problems that we faced whenever we were talking about, okay, how do I get that remote code execution to work? The first is whenever I send a command from controller to implant, implant says, okay, this is the command that I want to carry out. Let me execute this in a separate process. There are two different streams that you have to read in order to know the output from that process. The first is your standard out, and the next one is your standard error. So on your computer system, whenever you bring up a terminal and you say dir, you see the responses brought back from like your current working directory. Okay, that information was buffered across your standard out. However, let's say on your same terminal, if I enter in random commands and I say enter, it's an invalid command. That response was not brought back to you across standard out, but it was actually responded to you by standard error, saying, okay, sorry, I don't know what happened, an error occurred in the process execution, so here's the results of that process stream. So why is that so bad? I will explain in the next 2 bullets. The first thing is, it's not always clear which stream is buffered first. This is important because whenever I send a command, if I'm looking at the wrong stream at the wrong time, my program is actually going to block until I receive information across that stream before I can continue. The next problem is it's not always sure which stream is buffered first. Sometimes your standard error is buffered first. If nothing is received, like null, then I can go ahead and read my standard out. Other times, my standard out is buffered first, and then my standard error. Again, if I read from the wrong stream incorrectly, 3 things could happen. My program could freeze, it can block, or it can crash. This is definitely bad. So the next question that we ask ourselves is, how do we continue to carry out execution and code on each of those remote systems? And the answer is, it depends on the language. Okay, so the first thing that we did was program this in Java, because Java it's a good language that I can use the virtual machine, the JVM, to actually help me carry out additional exploits on the computer if I know what I'm doing. So I can actually just show it to you. Here's the first thing that we start out with. Whenever I want to receive any information across your standard error or any information across your standard out, I simply instantiate two different process worker threads. One thread is going to read your standard out, another thread reads your standard error. Whenever I receive any information across either of those streams, I'm simply going to buffer it across the socket and send it over to the controller. And now if you're wondering what is the actual code to carry out this in Java, we show it to you right here. And you will see it. I guarantee I'm going to post the code hopefully in 2 days. I've been saying that for the last 2 weeks, but hopefully this time by Monday the code will be up there. You'll see the link towards the end of this presentation. So that's Java. Just know that we need separate worker threads to handle reading each different stream that we're talking about. Now Python is so beautiful. It's like C, C++, or Python. You know, these are your better languages that you actually want to write your true implants and your true exploitation on your system. Python doesn't really care what happens across either of those streams. Whenever you say, okay, execute a command, I simply say, okay, whatever you receive across standard out, whatever you receive across standard error, join those 2 streams, send it over to the controller, I'll let the controller handle it. So that's how we we carry out our arbitrary code execution in Python. Okay, introducing Splinter the Rat. So what is Splinter the Rat? It's our post-exploitation tool that we created to allow you to control 1 or more implants from the same controller. You'll see the slides. I'll press because we've already been, 30 minutes? And I want to have time for the demonstration. Here's what the user interface looks like. We'll continue because you'll see it very soon. So, another feature that we thought was, how do you know where your implants are? Because sometimes if you have like a really good infection, you have a lot of systems across Ethernet, right? All you see is like an IP address. So one of the features that we added in, whenever you're looking at the controller, if you click on Google Map, as long as you're connected to the internet, we do our best to resolve where that actual implant is coming from. It's not precise, it's just simply taking that IP address, let me resolve where it appears to be from an IP database lookup server, and then let me render a map to you. So we're like, okay, I think that gives us an initial idea of where my implants are coming from. File transfer. This is very similar to what we were talking about before. What happens if we know that FTP is either heavily monitored or it's blocked on that computer or on that network that we're actually attacking? Well, we simply write our own file transfer protocol. So what are the things that we need? The first is a handle to the file. So now I can read information from the file. Establish a socket. So I grab that file, I start reading it, I establish a separate socket to the controller. The bytes that I read from that file, I simply buffer it across the socket, send it over to the controller, and now the controller writes every single byte that I received from the implant over to the computer system until I'm finished. And now once the process is complete, I close that socket, and now I actually just exchange files back and forth without having to use your predetermined or your pre-established file transfer protocol. You'll see this in slides to come, so we'll continue. Here's a pictogram I'm going to press because we're getting close on time and I really want to do a live demo. So knowing your enemy, knowing yourself. Generally, defense in depth is really good for one thing. In my opinion, it blocks very effectively your inbound connections coming into your enterprise network. So that means even if you have a legitimate web server and also my attacker domain from the bottom, if either of us establish an outbound connection through your internet cloud, I would expect it to be blocked at each gateway device inside your enterprise to keep me wherever I am from actually being able to reach any of your private systems inside your network. So hooray to defense in depth. I'm glad it does that. But the problem, understanding about defense in depth, is that if I have an inbound connection from inside my network, let's say I already have an infection on that computer system, and now I establish an outbound connection, generally defense in depth says, okay, go ahead. You're established from my internal network. I believe you are allowed to do so. So therefore, your normal users and also your attacker, I'm able to reach the legitimate website if I establish an outbound connection, but that also means I'm able to reach my attacker domain if I establish only outbound connections to reach where I'm coming from across the internet. So this is very important whenever we actually want to establish a relay bot. And the motivation behind this was myself and Nick were actually performing a penetration test against a really large network. And we had our implant on each machine inside the network, except we wanted to create one machine as our, like a file stager, to actually let me upload all these files from the network, let me hold it in one spot so I can just grab it from one spot whenever I carry it over to another network. But the problem was I cannot go from one system inside that network to another. But each of those systems can establish an outbound connection to arbitrary networks across your internet cloud. So we said, okay, how about we create a relay system to allow us to exploit one system to the other inside the same network only by establishing outbound connections. So what exactly does that look like? Okay, so we have more pictograms. The first that we created was a proxy. So for the most part, a proxy simply says, if I have an implant on that victim box, that implant's going to establish an outbound connection to my relay bot. As soon as I receive an outbound connection to that relay bot is now going to ferry that connection to another controller. As soon as that controller receives another outbound connection from the relay, I now, lo and behold, have two-way communication in which I can have command and control between this victim box establishing an outbound connection to the relay. That relay establishes an outbound connection to the controller, and now the controller is simply able to respond back to the relay responds back to the victim box, and command and control is established. So it was like really nifty that we're like, I don't know how to do this, but we just started and we were able to do that, and that took us like a day just to do, so it was not difficult at all. Now we have something that's a bit a better concept to actually talk about. So here we are. We have an infection onto the victim box. You see happy dances going on at the bottom. I know that the controller, I should not be able to expect that anywhere from inside my victim network, anywhere from my controller network, I should not be able to directly communicate to that victim box, right? We already know that we would expect to be blocked because of defense in depth. However, as soon as I get an infection onto the victim box, I simply have the victim box establish his outbound connection to the relay machine. Now, my controller also establishes an outbound connection to the relay box. And for completeness, we have another controller on this side who establishes an outbound connection to my relay. So now my relay is established. Every person only established an outbound connection to the relay system. Then what happens? The controller sends a command to the relay saying, okay, I would like you to execute this statement. In this example, I'm simply saying, grab this infected system, grab this file that I'm sending you. So the relay actually sends to the respective implant machines, this is the command that was sent from this controller. However, the other controllers that are connected to the same relay, they do not receive the command, they receive an echo of the command. That is kind of important to keep in mind. This is done so that you do not have an arbitrary person that's able to gain access to your botnet, because you don't want someone gaining access to your botnet now saying, I don't know, entire botnet, destroy yourself or shut down. That would be sad, Panda. We just established this botnet. Why should anyone do that? So that's why, per the relay, any command sent by a controller is simply echoed to the other observers. And you'll see that in our demonstration. Okay, so what happens next? Command was sent over to the infected machine, get this file, infected machine executes the file, and then he contacts the relay system saying again, here's the file, or here's the command that you told me to execute. Who would you like me to send it to? The relay bot then tells it, send it back to the controller. And now the file is able to be received back from the victim box, sent to the controller, simply by all of us establishing an outbound connection to the relay system. Okay, hiding your footprint, maintaining persistence, and now this is the introduction of a beacon bot. Are we familiar with Raphael Mudge? Do we know who he is? Good. All right, so Mudge is actually a really, really, really good guy. He's like a good friend of mine. He's actually kind of like an inspiration. I mean, everyone has a role model, so don't tell him that. But anyway, you know, he's just on Twitter, and actually when I saw him at Atlanta, he was talking at Hacker Halted. He said, instead of always having a persistent connection to your infected machine back to your controller, how about you have a beacon established so that at random times or at a specified time, I communicate to the controller, I say, do you have commands for me to execute? If you have commands for me to execute, I will execute those commands, and now I'll go back to sleep again. So that, let's say if I want to maintain persistence in the computer system for hours, I don't want that guy to always talk to me. I don't want a long connection established to my controller. I simply say, in 5 hours, check in if it is time to establish a shell. If so, establish the shell. If not, continue to sleep. So that's actually the purpose of establishing the beacon bot. And then we said, okay, how would that look like in our own system in Splinter? How can we establish a relay bot? A beacon bot. Okay, so let's go ahead and do so. Here we are. We have the infection on the victim box, and then we have the controller. As soon as I get an infection on the victim box, the beacon is going to wake. He'll register with the controller. The controller sends an acknowledgement packet back to him, and then the infected machine actually goes to sleep for that predetermined time. As soon as he wakes up, he's going to check in again with the controller. Do you have new commands for me to execute, or is it time to establish a shell? If it's time to establish a shell will be returned back to the victim box, so now I can continue to carry out additional exploitation of that victim machine, and then my actual implant is going to go back to sleep. Or if there is no time to execute commands, it simply goes back to sleep again. Orbiter payload. We'll talk about this briefly. Okay, good. So we'll even just talk about it from a pictogram. So we introduced an orbiter payload such that at any time, let's say there are various directories or there's a server that I know is very important inside an enterprise network. Instead of me always saying dir or ls to list all the files inside the server, how about I simply say anytime a new file is edited, anytime a new file is dropped at the specified directory, grab it and send it back to the controller immediately. Okay, so if that's the case, what would that actually look like? Like, how can we carry out such a thing that we labeled the orbiter payload? All right, so let's first start by, as soon as I gain entry to a system, I'm going to cast. I will look at every single file on the computer system. Files that do not match the attributes that the controller would like are sent back to the computer system. But new files that are like, ooh, this is nice and shiny, will automatically be buffered and sent across the socket over to the controller. So pretty much the controller sits back and lets new files to come to it in real time. You will see this in our demonstration. Okay, good. It is time for a live demo. Were there any questions of what we covered so far? No? Okay. All right, so hopefully, yeah, I don't know. I really want to get to this quickly, so we can have more time to do live demos. So let's first start out with looking at the controller. So this is the controller. We named it Splinter. This is how you actually establish the controller to listen for new sockets coming into the system. The first thing you do whenever you have the controller up is you establish your server socket to listen for new sockets coming from the implants. So whenever a new implant is going to connect to me, that's where you establish here, what port am I listening on? I usually like to use port 80. I'm a creature of habit. I started with it, so that's what you see here, port 8080. But this can be any arbitrary port that's free on your actual system that you can receive commands coming to. The next is FTP port. So whenever I want to receive files not using the FTP protocol, but our own protocol that we established, what port do I want it to be sent across? We'll be using port 9000. Again, creature of habit, I started with 9000. I don't know why, but I continue with port 9000. And so if you look across the top, you can see that the server socket is running. This is the established port to listen for new implants connecting to the system. 0 implants are connected at this time. This is the IP address that other implants will use whenever they connect to the controller. And then over here is port, I should say 9000, yeah. So that says 9000, that's the actual active FTP port that I have waiting to receive new files across. Okay, so next, if you use this binding option here, this is actually how the controller establishes an outbound connection. Let's say if you have a listener agent or if you have other controllers that you want to connect across, if you want to have like red team collaboration, you actually establish an outbound connection from your controller and you can specify who am I connecting to. Am I connecting to an implant, a controller, another relay system, or Cortana? That's a bot by Armitage or by Raphael Mudge that I will get around to programming. I kind of put it in as a placeholder to remind me, hey, I need to do that. All right, so at the bottom, this is kind of like your most important section, is right here. Right here tells you each system that is connected to my actual controller. So right now you see there's nothing populated here because we don't have any connections. As soon as we get a new connection, you'll see it will start to populate with new implants that are connected to the system. Over here to the left, these are if we have new beaconing agents. Whenever I receive that beaconing connection, it will show up in this spot, just saying beaconing implants. This next one is actually feedback that we received from DerbyCon. So we were at DerbyCon. One of the persons in the back said, do you do any logging so I can actually look at what occurs across the network? We said, we don't do logging, but we added that in. So now you'll see logging. I'll actually connect the logging agent. I'll show you the output, and then we'll move on. And I think there might be some information because I was testing this. OK, so in this bottom spot, you can see whenever we just lost a connection or whenever an implant has disconnected from my system, we keep a history. So you can see like what was the IP address of the system that was just disconnected. You can kind of just do some referential analysis to see, OK, who did I lose? Who do I need to go after again? Just so you have some history. OK, command terminal. This is, again, another important section of the actual controller. Whenever I want to send commands to new implants, it's going to show up here in your command terminal. Collaboration chat. If I have new controllers connected to the system, I can now have chat, or so we can actually talk to each other in case your controller's in a separate location, or in case you have other red team experts like in another room and I want to tell them I'm going after the system instead of calling, or so we just gave you chat in case you would like that. And also beaconing implants. So here, whenever we have new implants that are connected and they start to connect to the system, I can actually give it a series of commands to execute. If you click on add command, that starts to add new commands to execute whenever the beaconing implant connects to the system. And if there are no commands, or if you want to get rid of some of these commands, you just say delete. And the main shortcut that we have here is establish a shell. So whenever we're ready to establish a shell, we'll say establish a shell. All right, so I will delete that. And let's actually start by let's see, let's connect a relay. Let's establish our relay. Let's do that. How about we start with the relay? All right, so I have a few virtual machines up and running. I think this is the one we'll do a relay on. Yes. OK, so if I clear this, let's see. So this is written in Java right now. So if you say java-jar and I click on the actual Splinter, the jar file, if you do splinter-h, you'll be able to see the help. Like we gave you help options, and we pretty much tell you exactly how to use the program, or so whenever you need assistance in establishing your implant. OK, so in this side, we want to establish the relay. I want to show that first, because at Sector 2 weeks ago, we wanted to show it, and the live demonstration Gremlin got us. We're like, why doesn't this work? I don't know. So we'll try it here. If it works, yay. If not, I'm so sorry. Hopefully a video we upload will show that it's working right. So what we want to do is establish a bridge. So if I say Splinter implant bridge, B-R-I-D-G-E, and now I give it a port that I wanted to establish a bridge across. I will say port 9090. So OK, so it looks like that was successful. Now I have the relay system is listening for new connections or new implants to connect over to the system. OK, so if I establish an outbound connection from my controller to that relay system, you will see what it looks like here. OK, so let's go back real quick. Let's look at the IP address that I'm connecting to. I'm connecting to 192.168.182.130. OK, so let's establish that outbound connection here. 192.168.182.130. OK, and then I'm connecting to a relay system, and the port that I want to connect over to is 9090. All right, so if I say bind, good. All right, sorry, I'm doing a happy dance because that worked so far. OK, so as soon as we connected over to the relay, you can see that the implant type that we connected to was a relay bot. Now let's get another controller to connect to the relay bot, because I want you to see the input. You see there's no input in the command terminal. So if I have another inert terminal, OK, that he has no connections established, he has no server socket, or no one is connected to this other controller, I also want to connect out to the relay system. The relay is on 192.168.182.130 and port 9090, and I'm binding to a relay. So if I say bind, all right, that also is looking good. OK, so the relay is looking better. It's looking better. OK, so as soon as I go back to my controller, you can see that a new controller has joined the bridge. That's just input or feedback that we want to give you to know who's connecting to that relay. All right, so now you can see that's my username, and this is the IP address that's connected to, and also the computer name, Magneto. You can tell I'm an X-Men fan. OK, all right, so now let's establish an implant to connect out to the relay. OK, good. So what's going to happen? Assume that this is an infected machine, and he now establishes an outbound connection to the relay. So the implant machine is never going to connect to the controller, but yet from the controller, I will have two-way communication over to that implant. Let's hope this works. Let's see. Okay, so let's do this again. Java jar Splinter. Okay, yes. And I want to use the -I because I'm establishing an implant. And now, what's the IP address to the relay system? It's 192.168.182.130 on port 9090, right? 9090. And I want to give it a connection out. No, let me delete that. We also give you a timing. So in case that connection is lost, how soon do you want me to reestablish a connection? If you say T5, that's like immediately, or you can leave it blank and it just says, as soon as I lose a connection, do not reestablish a new connection. So, okay, good. Let's hope this works as soon as I get to the next screen. So what happened now, the implant establishes his outbound connection to the relay. So if that works right, I can go, another happy dance. Okay, so what happened, the implant machine connected over to the relay, my controller is connected to the relay, and now the relay brought the shell from that implant, from the relay, over to my computer system. So now I'm able to send it commands to say, okay, execute this command. But I will do it from this other controller. Remember, this other controller also established his outbound connection to the relay. And you can see that's small. Let me increase the font here. Let me go to 24. Okay, so now from the other controller that established his connection to the relay, I'll just say dir. Okay, so now he sent the command to the relay sent the command to the agent, and you see the response is brought back. Okay, so that's normal. Let's go back to the other controller. Remember I said commands are echoed from controller to controller. So if this worked right, you should see, yes, okay. So what you're actually looking at is the relay system knows who is connected to it. It knows who is the controller and who's the actual implant. So the implant, it actually said, implant, execute this command. To your other controller, it says, okay, here is a relayed command I received from another controller, and the other controller sent this command saying dir. Okay, so that's why you're seeing input here. It's from the other controller that worked. I hope that was okay. That was like a lot of work and frustration. However, we showed it to you in like 5 seconds, but it's okay. It's okay. There's more to show. So let's actually get another implant to connect over to the controller. Okay, let's go back to our virtual machines. I want to have this. This is just like another Windows 7 machine. I will have him connect directly to our controller that's listening on port 8080. So if I want to do that, I'll do java-jar Splinter-I for the implant. The IP address to the controller is 192.168.180. Fat finger, sorry. Okay, 182.1, and the port is 8080. Yeah, I won't use a T5. Okay, so let's hope that okay, good. So that looks to also have worked. So let's go back to the main controller. And from the controller, if I go back to active connections, you can see now that this is the communication that I had from the bridge. This is now the direct implant that is connected to me. So if I go back to the command terminal, I see that I have 3 connections into the system. 2 is from the relay, and 1 is from the other system that just directly connected, and that's showing up as a Windows Vista. I'll go back and fix that because it should say Windows 7. So now if I want to do a private communication just with each implant, you can click on them, or if you want to send commands to all of them, you just leave that blank. So the commands are actually relayed to all connected implants onto your computer system. And so now if I want to give it another command just saying like netstats-ANO. Let's see. Okay, so that's the information that's responded back from all the connected implants into our actual system. Let's go ahead and establish, let's do a logging agent, because I didn't get to show you what the logging agent looks like, right? So let's see if this is going to work. In fact, give me 1 second so I can see where I'm not in a virtual machine, so I can see where, okay, yes. All right, so everything's on the desktop. All right, so let me go back into the controller. If I just bring up my command prompts, and I just, really fat fingers. Okay, CMD. Okay, so if I go to the desktop, and now I say java-jar, I now want to open Splinter. If I say loggy, L-O-G-G-I-E, this is the logging agent that I want to establish. And I believe the next parameter should be the, oh, I spelled it wrong? Oh, Loogie, okay, L-O-G-G-I-E, sorry about that. 192.168.182.1, and the port I want to connect to, again, is on port 8080. And if this is correct, it should open good. So now this is the logging agent saying, okay, where would you like me to store the logging information that you're actually receiving across that socket? I will say I want you to store it in FTP. That's just my folder. I will say save. And if that's successful, the logging agent actually connects over to the controller. So this is just for defenders, because some people said they want logging into the system, so we went ahead and built that in. And now we have, if you click on logging, that's my logging agent that's established into the system. Okay, let's go ahead and get a beacon agent so I can show you what that looks like also. So let's get a beacon to the controller so you can see what the beacon looks like. How do I connect? How do I receive new commands and such? No, this one already has a connection. I might just close this one. Do I want to close this? Yeah, let's go ahead and close it. Okay, so if I close this, I now want to change my parameter to be -B for the beacon. I now say what port, what IP address do I want to connect to, 192.168, 182.1. The port is 8080, and now what's my beacon interval? Let's say 6 seconds. So every 6 seconds, the beacon will check in if there are new commands to execute. Okay, so I'll say 6. And again, you have the options in our help that we show above. 6 seconds, 6 secs. Okay, let's say enter. Okay, good. So what actually happened is, let me go back to the controller. And now if I go back to beaconing, yes. Okay, so let me go ahead and clear it. In the next 6 seconds, you'll see that the beacon just checked in. And the following next 6 seconds, we will actually start to calculate, the beacon interval. Every single time I receive a new beacon from that beacon agent, and also we try and anticipate based on an average of what we've seen before, when will this beacon agent connect back to us? So this is kind of, if you have like an hour interval or so, you'll know when am I expecting the next beacon to check in. Okay, so let's go to the beaconing tab, and you can see now that the beacon is just checking in every 6 seconds. The agent is just saying, okay, are there new commands for me to execute? There are no commands yet, so let's give it other command. Let's say IP config. Okay, that's, wow. Okay, IP config, so that's one command, and what's another command we can say? How about task list? Task list, let's see if that's going to work. Okay. Now, you can already queue multiple commands that you want to work from your beacon. If you go over here to the right and say enable, the next time the beacon checks in, he will see that those are the commands. There it goes. So those are the commands that you wanted the beacon to execute. And now, as soon as he received each command, he's going to execute those commands, and then he goes back to sleep. So if you don't want him to do that anymore, you can just disable your commands that you had in queue, and the next time he checks in, it just says, okay, beacon is checking in. So now you can see at periodic intervals that beacon is going to check in and establish a shell or execute various commands. I hope that was nice. So again, like 5-6 seconds that we showed this. This is like hours of beating your head across the computer. No, it's okay. Why not? Okay, so the next thing we would like to do is actually establish a shell. Okay, so you see that there are no implants connected to this actual controller right now. So whenever the beacon next checks in, I will actually have them bring a new shell back to the system. So let's do that. Let's say establish shell. Okay, I want him to check in real quick so you can see the connection come in. 1 second. Okay, there he goes. Okay, so he just checked in. I just told him establish a shell back to us. Whenever he checks again, hopefully the shell finds us. There it goes. Okay, so now that was from the beacon that just connected right back to the controller. So if I go back to my command terminal, I'll go ahead and clear the screen. I can now send commands back and forth to that beacon agent just as I wanted to before, because he just established a shell back to us. So what are some other things that I would like to do once I have access to the computer system? Let's see. We implemented quite a few shortcuts that you can actually see what he's doing. The first, I always like to start out with capture the screen. So I simply said, grab a look at what the screen, what the user screen looks like, and send it back to me. So all you have to do is go over to the shortcut that we made as easy as possible. You say capture screen. Captures the screen, it sends us an image, and now if you click on Dropbox at the bottom right, you can see what we just received from that infected machine. So that's his actual IP address, 192.168.161, yes, and on port 9000. So if I double click that, I go into screen capture. This is what's actually on the screen right now. So that was, thankfully, that appeared to work just fine. But let's talk about this for a second. Since I can send the implant to capture a screen at an arbitrary time, how about I tell the implant, as fast as you can, go ahead and capture more screens, so now I can actually see what the user is doing in real time. So if the user is browsing the website, if the user is watching a movie or so, I want to be able to do that from my actual controller. Is that possible? Yes, it is. Will that work? I don't know, but let's see. So if you go down to scrape screen, hopefully this is going to work. You will then be able to see like things that whatever the user is doing at the current time. So I think, is this system? I'm not sure. I'll bring up the task list. I don't think this is the one. Let me just move this over here. I'll just say process. I think it's actually this system. Yeah, it's this one. Okay, so if I bring over task list to this side, you can kind of see that, okay, what's actually running. So you can tell like whenever something new changes or so, you'll be able to see that. All right, so let's go back to the controller and let's simply say scrape screen. Okay, so if this is working, okay, good. All right, so it looks like it's actually, thankfully, it's working. So now you can see whenever the user is doing, whatever the user is doing on the actual side, I'm able to render that here on my controller. So now I can see if the user is browsing the website, if they're going to the banking website, or whatever it is they're doing, I'm bringing that to the controller. So now you're able to do this inside your own RAT. So again, I hope that too was nice. And whenever you get to work with Splinter, just work on it or go through the code to see how we did this. So now you're able to do this on your own side. All right. Let's close that. Let's talk about the orbiter payload. Instead of doing orbiter payload, let's. Do I want to do this clipboard injection? Yeah, sure. Why not? Okay. So one of the orbiter payloads that we give you is anytime the user copies anything into their clipboard. You know, they do Control-C or they want to copy something on their computer side. How about I automatically grab whatever they're copied and render it over here on the controller? So that's one of the things that we programmed here is the enable clipboard extractor. So if that works okay, we should see input that, oh yeah, I think it's going to work. That the clipboard extraction should be working just fine. I want to hurry so I don't run out of time to show you everything. So let's bring up Notepad. All right, if you say something, I'll go ahead and copy into the clipboard. Just say something. I like. Yes, okay, happy dance. In fact, if this works, I will do a happy dance. Okay, happy dance. All right, so let's just copy it. Let's right click. Actually, will this allow me? Okay, so let's do that. Let's move him to the right. Okay, yeah, so if I just say copy on the infected machine, you can see that the controller now receives everything that you say, happy dance, in real time. So if I were to just type like random statements here, 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 okay, like so, and I just right click on this side, whatever is automatically copied on the infected machine is now going to be rendered over here onto the controller. So I thought that this is actually a kind of scary payload to know that, okay, if someone has access to my system, what all can they do? In general, I actually copy a lot of stuff from my clipboard. I copy passwords, and so the clipboard I copy almost every website that I'm going from virtual machine to virtual machine. So I can understand if someone has access to your computer system, there's a lot that I can do simply by that initial access, which is why I guess we just have to understand that your normal defense in depth has failed to stop various attacks like this. Because if we're able to do this very easily, imagine again what your motivated attacker has already created. Okay, so that's one. So that's your clipboard extractor. How about a clipboard injector? So since I have the ability to extract from the clipboard, it would be nice if I can actually inject into the clipboard too. I think so. I hope so. Let's see. Okay, so let's stop clipboard extractor. Okay, good. So let's now enable a clipboard injector. So this is actually saying anytime you want to copy from one website to another, how about if you go to like www.amazon.com to enter in your credentials to purchase something, I send you to like amazon.com or something that looks similar to Amazon. Since you copied it from your clipboard, generally, I do not check if I copied something from my clipboard, paste into a URL, as soon as I hit enter, the website looks right. So I think it's legitimate. Okay, but now we should continue to think twice because we now have an injector payload. So let's see, say out another word that we should always inject into that clipboard. What's a word? Wah. Okay, all right, wah, ha 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 ha. Okay, so I'll just say, okay, hopefully this works okay. Let's now go back to this infected machine. So this is what we had before. Let's copy it. Let's just say copy. So we would expect what we just copied, and if I say paste, it should paste what I just copied. But if this works right, if I just say paste, aha. So everything that you just, anytime I want to copy anything into that clipboard, since I have access to that computer system, if I say copy, and now I say, let me clear the screen. I'll just delete it all, and I'll say paste. It's always going to be injected with, waha. So that's, just something that we thought was sensitive that an attacker is able to do. If an attacker can do it, we can do it. We want to show you what is possible. Okay, there's one more. Actually, what was that? Did I hear? Okay, sorry, I thought someone said something. Okay, let's actually do a running process list. I think this will be like the last one we have time to work on. So since I have access to your computer system, I want to be able to see a running process list. I hope this works, because this is actually one of the most temperamental. Okay, good. This is looking to work okay. All right, so this is actually the infected machine. This is what's running on its task list. But since I have access to the task list, that also means I can destroy or I can kill processes that are running on that actual system. So that's what we did here. We gave you a process snipe, saying any process that you tell me to kill, I'm going to kill. So generally, I like to pick on Notepad, but today I will do calc. See, calc.exe. Okay, so anytime that whichever programs that you input into the process snipe, and we also made it that if you separate it by the comma, so if you want to add, I don't know what program they're running, but if they're running a set of these antivirus programs, Komodo, AVG, Avast or so, kill all of them. Okay, let's go ahead and put a list of things I wanted to kill. So let's say calc.exe and Notepad, my favorite two programs to pick on. All right, so I can say that here in process snipe. Make sure you click engage sniper. So now if I go back to, let me minimize this. I just want you to be able to see it better. I hope, I don't know if this will show up okay. All right, let's go down. Okay, let's go back to the actual infected machine. And now let's see, one of the programs that we're killing is Notepad, right? So let's go ahead and just bring up Notepad. Notepad. If Notepad comes up, it should die. And a sec, okay, there it goes. So good, so that actually worked. And anytime I see that program is started, I simply kill it. Oh yes, question?
So, are you running the Java as administrator, or does it have privileged escalation in order to be able to kill administrative tasks too? Or?
Yes, that's correct. Right now we did not go into the actual privilege escalation, but any program that's started by the actual user that I'm infected on at the time, whatever rights that they have, the implant is going to have. So unfortunately, if I'm at a user level and I infected the system at user level and I have an admin task that I want to kill, I cannot kill it because it's at a lower ring. But we're just going to have to wait until we released our Python and our C to inject into system. I think that's going to be a nice one, because if I'm at system, I'm like at God's rights at the computer. I'm even above admin. So that's the next one that we're working on. It just takes time to release it.
Was a sniper, is that a one-time shot or is that repetitive?
It is repetitive. In fact, let's see. So it killed it once, right? So let's bring up Notepad again. Hopefully it starts up. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Sorry. Yeah, it's hard to see since it's sharing the screen. Okay, so Notepad is up. Okay, good. So it continues to go as long as it's enabled. And the same thing for calc. Yes, sir. I see your question.
Two quick questions.
Yes, sir.
The
Good. I love that question. Actually, no. Right now, I'm not encrypting the command and control traffic because I kind of want it to be benign initially, saying, okay, here's the tool, here's what we created, nothing is encrypted. And I think I'll get to the slides that we'll actually talk about. Encryption is the next functionality that we're going to create as soon as we get the Python done. We're going to encrypt, because it's like hacking 101, hide, obfuscate the way that I'm actually. Well, let's see. So your question was, I guess the main point of your question is what exactly are you logging, right? So do I log anything that's received by the system? Am I logging whatever received by the controller, right? Is that what you're saying? Okay, I will show you. So the way we created the log is any single thing, any parameter that's received across the socket from the controller sent to any implant and received from any implant is going to be logged. So you can see everything that goes on across your network. So if you actually want to audit your network and see what goes on, you can actually use your audit log that we created to say, okay, what did I catch and what was missed? So thank you for bringing that up. Let's actually bring up the logging agent, because he should still be running if I can find him. Exit. I'm sorry, I should have exit. I did run the logging agent, right? At the beginning? I think so. Hopefully this is him. It's the last guy. Let's stop that real quick. Yes, that was the log. Okay, so if I go back to the desktop, I click on FTP. Yes, so the logging agent that we started, he creates his own logging directory. And right now, I wasn't sure the best way that you all would like to receive logs. So whenever you run Splinter, if you just give us feedback to say, okay, which format do you like better? And that would be like the main one. that you will see. So right now I have a raw log and also a formatted log. Oh, it's too large. Okay, good. It shows up okay. So the formatted log is pretty much whatever was received across the controller, I put it in CSVs. So you can actually load it into Excel or any other program that you have. You can parse by the commas so you can determine what did the controller see. So if we go down, you can see that this is the Splinter controller. He is talking to a beacon implant. And let's see, what did he say? What was exchanged? Set implant. Okay, that was the actual initial registration. So whenever I have initial registration by the implant, you see what was exchanged across the controller. So this is the formatted log. I want to go into the raw log. I kind of like the way that one looks more. All right, let's go down to the right. So every single thing you would have seen across Wireshark or your network, we store it here. So what would your network have seen between the controller and the implant? You see it at this spot. So let's see if we can find the directory traversal. There it is. Okay. So whenever the controller send a command saying dir, or this is actually from the beacon checking in, this is everything that was exchanged across the network between the implant and the controller. So we store it in the log so you can see what did I see and what did I miss. Although we're going to defeat this as soon as we start to encrypt, the communication, but we will still give you like an unencrypted log and also an encrypted log so you can see what you could have seen and what you missed. Okay, so that's the logging agent. Because we had feedback to see the log. I think I was talking about something, I forget. Process snipe, I forgot. All right, it's okay, it might come up as we continue the presentation. So let's press, I think there's probably just one more thing to show you, and if there are other questions, I can stay after, or we can talk about it more. Because I love talking about the code, and I love talking about how we created this, because my goal is for everyone to know how to do this, since it's not trivial, but it's almost simple if you know the initial steps of how you want to establish your command and control. So now let's start to wrap up with prevention and mitigation actions. So we spoke about the relative ease that you can create botnets or your actual remote administration tool. But how would you begin with prevention? The first thing to understand is almost every single detection tool or prevention tool, especially if it's signature-based, is going to have its limitations. The first is if we start out understanding that your antivirus is not, it's not full safe. Because some people will say, oh, it's okay, as long as I have an antivirus, as long as I have my intrusion detection system or my intrusion prevention system established across my entire enterprise, I should be safe from new viruses. Some people might even say, oh, in fact, our enterprise antivirus system receives updates multiple times a day. Therefore, we'll always update for the new 0 days. I've heard it before. Yeah, I know you smile. It's like, really? Do you really think you're safe just because you receive updates? So what would a normal antivirus vendor have thought of Splinter? In March, we actually uploaded the entire program to see, okay, hopefully we will at least be caught by Komodo. Hopefully Symantec will catch us. Hopefully Avast will actually catch us too and say, you appear to be malicious. I'm not sure, but I think you have some heuristics that say you're malicious. So what did all of them say? Out of 45 vendors tested on VirusTotal, none of them said that this program was malicious. So it's kind of just understanding that there are limitations. They are necessary to use, but in and of itself, that's not adequately sufficient. Because right now, I would have said, no, Splinter is not malicious, because no one would have detected on it. So therefore, if I establish this on your network, would your network have caught this initially? Most likely not. Most likely not, but we'll see. Other people might have said, oh, it's okay, I have packet analyzers and data loss prevention, and also deep packet inspection. Therefore, if I see like directory traversal, which is what you're seeing here, oh, I didn't show you the file browsing. If we have time, we'll go over file browsing. But this is actually what you would have seen across Wireshark. If I actually say, okay, render the file system back into the controller, this is the network traffic that you would have seen. Or what about this other side? This I showed you is that the running process list, this is what you would have seen in Wireshark. That's actually the parameters of each process. As soon as I received it on the controller side, I rendered into a user interface so you can see what's running on the computer system. So other people would have said, oh, I would have detected that if I see it across the network. I'm glad you would have detected the plain text data, but our question from our gentleman in the back was, what about if it's encoded or encrypted? Generally, what is the strategy that people should think using packet analyzers and data loss prevention? If your traffic is encrypted, if it's stealthy, low and slow, I only send 1 bit at a time. I send 2 or 3 bits at a time. I'm implementing my traffic through a beacon agent. Or if I use like steganography, a friend of mine Dan Gunter and myself, we did a couple of presentations last year in which we established command and control using steganography. We actually embed all of your sensitive files inside images, and then we uploaded them not to ourselves, but we uploaded it to Twitter. So now, if you're auditing your network, all you see is normal people are exchanging files across your system, but not knowing that I've embedded a lot of data behind those images. So what is your detection, or what is your defense strategy as your attackers continue to increase in sophistication? We simply need to understand that there are a lot of limitations in the way we believe our tools are actually working for us. Something else that defeats your detection is if my network traffic here is obfuscated, it's encoded, or definitely if it's encrypted. We haven't done the encryption yet, but it's going to come. Something else, I like this one. Somebody else might have said, oh, as long as you're not running at admin level, then you can't successfully fully exploit that computer system. That is possible. However, there are always multiple ways to social engineer the user in order to get information back. So here's one thing that we did. Can you detect the counterfeit user accounts control? Is it this one? Is this the counterfeit one? Or is this the counterfeit one? Who says 1 is counterfeit? Okay, all right, 3 hands. Who says 2 is counterfeit? Okay, 1 hand. Okay, cool. So here's one thing that we kind of tried to help you out. You can't read it that well, but that actually says spoofed program title. But we're just trying to help you and say, okay, which one's malicious? But that's intentional. We will show you how to change that in a second. So let's show you some of the things that you could have detected of the actual one that we social engineered the user. Here are things that we added in. Number 1. This is, there's no image here. We added in that image. We added in, we misspelled. This is normally called user account control. So intentionally, we misspelled it. User accounts control. Subtle, but still. We don't want to be that malicious because we're trying to show you everything. Yeah. Okay, so we added in just a few extra things. So spoof program title. We said software is secure. What does that mean? I don't know. But if you social engineer an admin saying, why did this user accounts control pop up? Oh, it says software secure. I might enter in my credentials. We'll see what happens. Okay, and other things that we changed, let's see. The image is blurred. We blurred that image slightly, and we also blurred this. So it looks a little grainy if you're actually trying to look at this from your real eye. So again, we're trying to be malicious, but also help to just show, whenever you're doing audits on that network, okay, some things can be malicious, but not everything is what it appears to be. Okay, so I think that's about it. Let's see, next slide. Yes, demo. Okay, good, it's demo time. All right, so let's actually show the user accounts control. I hope this is going to work okay. This is still, good, this is looking good. All right, so let's actually do a user accounts control on an arbitrary program. Again, I like using Notepad, so I'm going to use Notepad. So if you want to do that, enable, just say engage spoof. All right, so now what program do I want to attach to? Such that anytime I see this program attached, what happens normally when you user accounts control, when you want to open a program that's protected under an administrative right? I cannot open that program until user accounts control opens up. If I enter in the correct credentials, user account control goes away, and then the real program opens again, right? So let's go ahead and mimic that behavior here. Let's do that with calc, okay, calc.exe. Okay, so we do calc.exe, you go over here to the right and say engage spoof. Okay, so let's go over to the infected machine. Let's make this larger again. I think I can get rid of you. I can minimize this. And so calc was the program that we said, if I see this running, get rid of it. Okay, so let's make it larger. Okay, good. So now let's just start calculating. Now that's just an arbitrary program that we chose. You can choose any program that you would like and it will work the same. Okay, so calc comes up, calc was killed. Now your user accounts control, a frame that looks just like the previous, comes up. So what would you think? I don't know, it actually enters in my username properly. The program name is calc.exe because that's what I tried to start. And now let's go ahead and enter in a password. Let's say a password. What's a password anyone would come up with? Password. Okay, I like guess me because password. Guess me. Okay, so get G-U-E-S-S, guess me. Okay, so it kind of looks legitimate. Okay, so let's say enter. UAC goes away, and now that program that you wanted to start comes up again, all right? So let's see, what did the controller actually see? Let's minimize that again. Let's go back to the control, there it is. Okay, so if you see on your controller, you have UAC, that's the username, and then that's the password that you actually said, guess me. So, it's just social engineering will always be very effective to try and attack a system. If my exploits don't work, change your attack. So try and social engineer the user to try and get additional credentials. So that's just one other thing that we wanted to show. I'm very close to time, but if I did have additional time, we would have gone over like file browsing. But if you want to do that, click on the shortcut, say browse file system, and a new frame should come up. There it is. Populate. Okay, so yeah, I just have to choose a directory. There it is. So if I want to just browse that actual system, I can click on it, browse whatever I want. And if I want to download a file, just double click that file and it'll automatically download it back to the controller system. If there was more time, we would have done more. I ran out of time to do the orbiter payload for executables, unless you really want to see that. Okay. Do I have time? How much time do I have left? Oh, I'm already over? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, I'm over time. Okay, sorry guys, if you all have like another briefing to go to, I guess go to it. The next thing after me is lunch, right? Is that,
So it's up to these guys.
okay, can I show that real quick, Orbiter? Okay, good. Happy dance. Okay, so what we'll do, let's actually say orbit the directory. Actually, I don't know the username that I'm establishing. Let me say, who am I? Who am I? Will this work? Okay, admin. Okay, admin. Okay, so if I actually say orbit directory, if you go to the shortcut and say orbit directory, this is the directory. Let's say I want to orbit a new file, a new folder on the system, on the desktop. Let's go to the infected machine. Let's create a new folder, just for demonstration's sake. Let's say new folder. What's the folder name? Stuff. Okay, stuff. All right, good. So we just have an arbitrary folder on the infected machine. Let's go back to the controller, and we'll now say the user we are is admin, desktop, and then stuff is the folder that we created, right? Okay, the next parameter that you have is star.star. This is actually saying what attributes, what types of files do you want me to exfiltrate whenever I see new files are being dropped into that system. Right now we'll just say everything. Everything you see, everything in his brother and his cousin and mother too, send it back over to the controller. True says to, do you want me to recurse other subdirectories inside that main directory that you specified? So if you generally just leave that true so that if new folders are dropped, I will continue to look inside those directories. New files that are dropped in there, I will exfiltrate it automatically back to the controller. And now the next is my wake seconds. How often do you want me to check are new files dropped into that directory? I will specify 1 second, so that is always just checking the folder, anything new, bring it over to me in real time. So if that, okay, so it looks like that was successful. Controller just sent the implant. Start to orbit this directory. All right, let's go back to the implant machine. So nothing is in stuff here. Okay, so as you see, nothing in the sleeves. Let's go back to my desktop real quick. So if I do desktop, I go to FTP. This is the main system that we're talking about. You see that there's no folder here created yet that says orbit. It should say like orbiter or something. Some directory with the words orbit in it will be created once I receive new files. All right, so let's create a new, I have executables in here. Yeah, so I used sysinternals before. I really like sysinternals. Let's just copy some of these files. All right, this mimics like the user just dropping new files into that server directory that you specified. So if I copy new files into that directory, I copy it. Okay, so you see that on the infected machine, it doesn't look like anything just happened. So let's go back to the controller and let's hope this worked. If the good. Okay, so the controller actually says that he just received all of these files automatically because you just specified your orbit directory. Orbit the directory, any new file that you receive, copy over to the controller. All right, let's go back to our Dropbox. And in Dropbox, this is the actual IP address. So we have the new directory that's dropped. It says orbiter payload. And here are all the files that, that was just automatically copied from that folder that you labeled stuff back over to the controller. So now you can understand, if I just have an initial foothold into your system, I'm only limited based on my imagination as far as how far do I want to exploit that system. Because any file that's received, I now grab it back. Automatically. Most people do not detect that this is going on. So let's just do one more file to drop into the system because I kind of like doing that. Let's 1 sec. Sorry. Okay, this is good. Let's say new text file. Let's say stuff also. So anything that I want to put into this file, just so you can really see that, yeah, it's actually copying. Whatever it is, go ahead and give me another word or some text.
So much stuff.
So, okay, much stuff. Okay, so if I save that, I can close it, and if I just drop it into that, whichever directory that you specified for me to orbit, let's go back to the orbiter, just 1 second, and then let's see, I should have, there it is. So stuff also is what we are able to copy. Wrong folder, log, orbit directory, so much stuff. Do you see? There it is. Okay, so stuff also. So that's everything that you're able to modify and extract. One more thing I want to show you is that whenever you drop the same file that doesn't have any edits, remember every single time the orbit directory is checking, are there any new files? We don't simply take any new file that is found. Only if the file has changed, then do I continue to bring that back over to the controller. That's something to keep in mind. Otherwise, your controller is bombarded with so many files of the exact same because nothing has changed. Okay, so if I go back to so much stuff, and I just make a change, and this much also. So the same file is in the same directory. Notice it did not continue to copy over that file until I make a change. If I just say save, and we just said, and this much also. All right, so let's go back to the controller. 1 second, let's open the Dropbox. And we should see the new file has been brought over. There it is. Yeah, so as the user is modifying changes, as they're making new things, that is also being copied over to our system. Yes, sir?
If the user were to delete a file, would you see that also?
No, if the user deletes the file, we've already copied it over. So
And in the logs it wouldn't show?
no, because the logs is just across our network traffic.
I see.
Yes, okay, so I think that's mostly of what we wanted to show in terms of how to use Splinter just so far. I mean, really, there's a lot more to see whenever you start to play with it. So other things we just want to finish with, most importantly, is to understand that sophistication is always going to increase. One slide, is there still hope? Yes. Instead of believing that we're safe because we haven't received antivirus and IDS alerts, you know, one thing that we kind of need to change the defensive paradigm is to understand or to believe that if this system, if this network is already compromised, how can I still secure the data? You know, how do I still validate that my data is safe? I'm baiting the question because that's what my research is in. So the next conference that you see, hopefully I will present a construct that answers that question. It's really difficult, but we'll see how far we can get in research. And also really consider anomaly and heuristic-based prevention instead of simply focusing on signature-based detection, because signatures can be defeated on the fly very easily. I think upcoming features, so there are a lot of features, and this is just features that we put in like a couple of months ago. There are even more things that I'm working on right now that I haven't even put here yet. So just know it's a work in progress. Your input and your feedback directly helps molds where Splinter goes. Because as you use it and you would like to have the system do this or do that, just let us know and we'll add it for you, because this is meant to be released open source so you can have fun, you can play with it, audit networks, and also see how to do this. And finally, credits. I really like to give credit to whom is due. So whenever you have new stuff that you tell us, we'll say, hey, thanks. Really, I like this input that you gave us. So first is my actual academic advisor in school, Dr. Barry Mullins. He was with me at DerbyCon. He wasn't able to make it here. But I just want to say thanks, because I appreciate your feedback and your help. Also, Raphael Mudge, like that guy is a huge inspiration with Armitage, working with a lot of the code that he releases, his tutorials. So, I just have to say, it's really good stuff. Next one is Dan Gunter. We did presentations last year, and this coming summer, hopefully we should have trainings ready to actually go over how do you do more programming and how you do more forensics, how you do more steganography and exploiting computer systems. Matthew Weeks, that's a really smart guy, and he's actually a script junkie. He releases really sexy exploitation techniques, but also he comes back to tell you how do you defend your systems. So anytime that I work on exploitation, I also want to focus on defense so that you understand how do you exploit the system, how do you defend the system. And geolocation, and I also thank Google and Stack Overflow because they've saved me so many times. Sources, questions. Are there any other questions or no? Yeah, I'm so sorry. Yeah, out of time. Okay, so we'll just finish. This is where the code will be posted whenever I can get the code up. Hopefully in 3 more days, the code will be up for you. And if you have any emails, just go ahead and send me an email. I will do my best to start responding back. I've been absent for like the last 2 weeks, but I'll respond, and that's our Twitter. Okay, I'm sorry, I really went over time. I really apologize for running over time, but thank you very much for your input. Thank you for coming. If you have questions, just let me know, and I'll do the best I can to answer you. So thank you again very much.